Conversations off the floor, please. The committee will come to order. It is now in order to consider amendment number 32, printed in the House Report 118-142. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 32, printed in House Report number 118-142, offered by Mr. Crane of Arizona.
The committee will come to order. Pursuant to House Resolution 583, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I rise before you with a critical amendment.
The gentleman will suspend. The committee will come to order. Gentleman's recognized.
Today I rise before you with a critical amendment that remedies the harm imposed by political and military leaders that emphasize social justice, progressive dogma, and climate issues against the dedicated men and women of our armed forces who join to defend our country. My amendment specifically prohibits DoD from considering race, gender, religion, or political affiliations or any other ideological concepts as the sole basis for recruitment, training, education, promotion, or retention decisions. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek time in opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this week Republicans are choosing MAGA extremism over our military, over women's health rights, and over diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our military, Mr. Speaker, was found to fight for the freedom of all of our citizens. House Republicans have threatened democracy with these divisive amendments, setting us back in history, far before civil rights, taking us back to slavery. The very fabric of our country stands on equal rights, freedoms, and the decisions of all our citizens. These amendments are used to be put in our defense bill. They are divisive amendments using the defense bill to undermine the freedoms, for us to learn about one another, for us to hire one another, for us to understand our cultures. It would bring us together if we did D&I. Even your own chairman of the Financial Services Committee said we would include diversity and inclusion in our committees because we are stronger when we are together. Democrats have long advocated for more rights, not for less, for more access to those marginalized, more freedom for those who are considered citizens of our beloved country. Mr. Speaker, this is wrong, and we are better than that. It is very difficult as a black woman for me to stand on this House floor and have my colleagues say that there is no value, there is no need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I yield back.
Gentlelady reserve. Gentlelady
reserve.
Yeah. Gentleman from Arizona.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that my colleague talks about the divisiveness of this amendment. It's not divisive at all. What's divisive is how the military is becoming a social experiment. I don't know about how many people over there or how many other people in this chamber served in the military, but I happened to join the Navy the week after 9/11. And I can tell you this, I served with all sorts of people from all over the country, multiple colors, and you know what? The people that I served with were there not because of what race they were there because they passed the standards. They were there because they were the best of the best. And you know what? That made me feel really safe when we were going into the most dangerous parts of the world. And that's what we need to continue. We need to have a military that continues to be the strongest military in the world because of standards. because the people that we have there are the best of the best. The military was never intended to be, inclusive. Its strength is not its diversity. Its strength is its standards. And diversity can be a great thing, but that should not be our focus. And I'm going to tell you guys this right now. You can keep playing around these games with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there are some real threats out there. And if we keep messing around and we keep lowering our standards, it's not going to be good. I reserve my time.
The gentleman reserves. All members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Mr. Chair, I yield 1 minute to Congresswoman Judy Chu.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I rise in strong opposition to these amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, which aren't designed to protect our national security or support the men and women in uniform who protect our freedoms. These amendments are anti-diversity and anti-freedom. They hurt women and restrict access to necessary abortion care. They are homophobic. They censor service members. They deny the existence of trans people. They needlessly undermine our military's readiness, cohesion, and effectiveness. They even attack our domestic film industry. Further, these amendments seek to interfere with international collaboration on research by targeting Asian researchers, scientists, and then peddle conspiracy theories about COVID-19. As chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I have to underscore how these amendments open the door to more hate, violence, and profiling of Asian Americans, especially after 3 years of increased anti-Asian hate. Ultimately, what was a bipartisan bill in committee has become a vehicle for MAGA Republican extremism. Vote no.
I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Chairman, I want to yield 30 seconds to my colleague, Andy Harris.
The gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, the gentleman from Arizona has it absolutely right. When I was in the military as a physician, what you wanted when you were injured in battle was the best person taking care of you with the greatest skill. You didn't care what the color of their skin was. You didn't care what their religious was. You didn't care what their background was. You wanted a highly trained individual who was going to keep our fighting force healthy. Mr. Chairman, that's why we need this amendment, to protect our men and women serving this country. This has nothing to do about other amendments. It's about having a fighting force that is the best in the world. I yield back.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to Congresswoman Fletcher.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this amendment and to the amendments that this body has debated here today, what they have done to this traditionally bipartisan process, but more important, what they do to the members of our armed services, especially our women in uniform. In 2021, women made up more than 17% of our active duty force, 231,000 members, and 21% of our National Guard and Reserves. More than 23,000 of them are stationed in Texas. Every day, the women of the United States military fight for our freedom. And yet today, House Republicans are asking these women to fight for your freedom while they just voted to take away theirs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Arizona.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, how much time do we have remaining?
Gentlelady from Ohio has 1 minute remaining.
Mr. Speaker, in closing, let me just say that this is difficult today. But let me assure my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that we are not playing games. Let me assure my colleague on the other side of the aisle that we take this very seriously and we take it very personally. Let me assure my colleagues on the other side, when we use a defense bill, when we use our military, I'm old enough to remember when black officers, when women were not allowed to serve. You are setting us back on this floor on both sides of the aisle. We have people of color, we have people who have served, women who have served on this side of the aisle. And to use it to deny women's rights to their reproductive rights, to use this as an excuse and a political maneuver. We are so serious that this has become something that is very difficult for us to stand on this floor and work with you and look at you for something that is so appalling.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members are reminded again to direct the comments to the chair. Gentleman from Arizona.
Well, Mr. Chairman, though that was unbelievably inspiring, my amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve, okay? It has nothing to do with color of your skin, any of that stuff. What we want to preserve and maintain is the fact that our military does not become a social experiment. We want the best of the best. We want to have standards that guide who's in what unit, what they do. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, they are not doing this because they want the strongest military possible. I hope my colleagues on the other side can understand what we're doing. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, asking to be recognized to have the words colored people.
For what purposes does the gentlelady seek recognition?
I'd like to be recognized to have the words colored people stricken from the record. I find it offensive and very inappropriate.
Is the gentlelady asking for unanimous consent to take down the words?
I am asking for unanimous consent to take down the words of referring to me or any of my colleagues as colored people.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Arizona?
Can I amend my comments to people of color?
The gentleman wishes to amend his comments. Is the gentleman asking consent?
Mr. Speaker, to have the word stricken. I didn't ask for an amendment.
Is there unanimous consent to have the word stricken? Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman from Arizona. How much time do you have?
Thank you. I yield back my time.
You have 1.5 minutes remaining if you choose to use it. Gentleman yields back. So the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
The recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 33, printed in the House Report 118-142. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek recognition to promote my bill, which eliminates any offices of diversity.
Does the gentleman have an amendment at the desk?
Amendment 1465.